girlfriend. At this point, we've been in business almost 15 years. We've worked with over 150 different women-run organizations, women's cooperatives. Many of you are in the room over the years. I want to tell you a little bit about how I started, though, and why I started, because while we sell apparel and women's accessories and gifts, things like that, I am probably your least likely social entrepreneur here in this room. I am certainly your least likely fashion leader. This is about as dressed up as I get, and I'm very impressed with this dress. If anyone who has known me for years knows I'm more of a jeans and Birkenstocks kind of girl, even when Birkenstocks were not in. So I didn't get into this business to do fashion, to do exotic import. I got into this business because I was a social worker. I worked in the United States in child welfare. I worked with families. I worked mostly with women who were on the brink of losing their children, mostly because of economic reasons. There were cases of abuse, but overall it was mostly women who didn't have the money to be able to meet the standard that I lived in the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois thought was appropriate. So women on the brink of losing their families. And our agency would come in and try and do whatever it took to keep that from happening, right? So if a woman was going to lose her child to the state because she didn't have a home, we'd find her a home. We'd find her at least a hotel room for the night. So that's sort of my background. I love social work. I'm good at social work because what I am best at is finding the resources that people need, right? You need this, okay, let's go figure out what it is. And then letting people build those opportunities for themselves, right? Opening the door so that they can walk through. So later, in the late 90s, my in-laws, my father-in-law was actually a politician in Illinois. He was the governor of Illinois for several years. And when he left office, my mother-in-law and he got a chance to be on the board of the World Food Program. And they went out to places the food program was giving food assistance. And as many of you may know, there was always some sort of phenomenal women's enterprise selling their amazing crafts to aid workers and visitors, right? Part of the tourism industry. And she would come back with these beautiful things I could never make. I'm not a maker, right? I'm not making you any bracelets after this. I'm not a maker. And I just thought, oh my gosh, these are just gorgeous things that I can't get here in my neighborhood, in my community. And then my mother-in-law would tell me the stories of the women she had met and the hardships that they were dealing with. And I thought, okay, this doesn't make any sense, right? Because I actually know women right here in my neighborhood who would want these beautiful things on the quality alone, but they don't have the opportunity to access them. And my mother-in-law has met these women who need that opportunity. So it was those two statistics, the fact that of the almost 1 billion people who live on less than $1 a day, 900 million of them are women. They're us, sorry fellas, I mean there's good for you, right? They're us. And on the flip side, I live in the United States, and in the United States, 80% of all household purchases, 80% of the buying is done by who? By women, right? So let's get the two together. And that sounds like a great idea, except like a lot of the organizations that just spoke, I didn't have any money, right? I just told you I was a social worker. I was a social worker whose husband was just let go from the tech bubble downturn. So I had an unemployed husband. We had moved to Colorado. We had 3 kids. I was thinking about moving back to Illinois with my family. And this idea just kept bubbling up. And I talked to my mother-in-law for a long time. She put me in connection with some of the women she met. And I begged my husband, hey, listen, we're getting a tax refund of $2,000. How's about you let me spend it on fair trade product from women's cooperatives? And he's like, well, what the heck? You know, we have no money anyway. Let's just go for it. And so I brought in about $2,000 worth of product. I invited 100 women to my house to explain the idea of fair trade and the idea of the difference that they could make with these gorgeous products. And we pretty much sold 100% and open the market by having almost every woman there say, okay, I know you can come to my church. I know about the Junior League event. Why don't you do this? I'm like, well, it's going to take about 4 months because I have no more product because you bought it. But that's how Global Girlfriend started. And in 2003, there weren't as many organizations doing this. So we also got a lot of good press. We had a small article in a local magazine called 5280 in the Denver area. And someone at Whole Foods was reading it on the Whole Foods stand. An employee called me up and said, we need your products here in the Whole Foods store. Whole Foods is a huge chain in the US, and they have some stores in London. And I'm like, well, I don't wholesale. I don't know how to do that. They're like, well, we're Whole Foods and we're calling you, so perhaps you'll want to figure that out, like real soon. And that has been kind of the birth of our growth. Fast forward 15 years later, we're now part of a larger company called the Greater Good Network. We're the Women Made Fair Trade brand inside of that. We sell direct to consumer through our website. We have an annual gift mail order catalog, and we sell to about 1,500 stores across the United States and do, close to $2 million a year in Women Made Fair Trade products. So what I would say to each of you is you don't need to know what you're doing. You don't need to know what you're doing, right? The important thing is persistence and actually doing it and doing it together.
Mm-hmm.